finna get my son no motherfucking out here. I'm training them boys.
This is
right.
child abuse.
I'm training them boys right. Ask in there my nephew. Ask in them. Ask my son. Yeah. They were 12, 13. They got it.
This is rape.
Yeah.
This is facilitated rape by a father.
Yeah. Hell yeah, I got my son. He's right.
And so, yes, those children need to be taken out of the home immediately. What also needs to happen is that Boosie should be arrested and charged, at minimum, endangering the welfare of a child. Multiple children. Again, with these issues, it's black or white. And you know that I'm one who always try to see the gray. But it's black and white. Now, surprisingly, I've seen people speaking out about this. And they've gotten the conversation half right. They're castigating Boosie for these comments, and not only for the comments, but for the actions. We live in a society where all child sexual assaults aren't equal. Why? Due to ideas like masculinity, right? Which stems from patriarchy. I got to throw those social justice words out there. And so when we look at it as a rites of passage for young boys who mess with older women. Conversely, if it was a young girl and an older man, he's looked at as a predator. This is woven into the fabric of society. Think about it. How many people know the name Larry Nassar? The predatorial doctor who assaulted hundreds of athletes at Michigan State. Hundreds of Olympic athletes. But how many know about the doctor at Ohio State who was sexually assaulting men during the early 90s? And we're starting to see doctors at other universities who sexually assaulted dozens and dozens of men. Won't hear about those, do we? Why? Because we understand that it's a double standard that exists. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that girls and women are more likely to be survivors. I don't like using the term victim. Survivors of sexual abuse, right? But that doesn't negate the boys who experience it as well. And so we need, if we're going to progress in this society, we have to shift that idea. This isn't a all lives matter type of conversation. And if it is, I don't really give a damn. Because we understand what comes from this. Again, we could look at R. Kelly. Yeah, y'all don't want to hear R. Kelly, do y'all? Y'all don't want to hear that name brought up. Because you only want to look at him as being a predator. But you don't want to look at him as potentially being a survivor that influenced how he's showing up in his adult life. We're not ready for that conversation. But we're going to have to be. Or we're going to continue to produce more R. Kellys. How do we know these 12 and 13-year-old boys enjoyed it? How do we know that they even wanted that to happen? Why should they be mentally, emotionally, and physically and spiritually compromised to have to make these decisions at such a young age? Why is this being forced upon them by their father, no less? Now, I'm going to shoot Boosie some bail. I know I said I wasn't earlier, but I'm going to shoot him a little bit. This is learned behavior. Things like this are learned behavior. Now, I'm not saying somebody got him fellatio when he was a child. But I know I've worked with a lot of boys who were sexually preoccupied at a young age. Some of them were molested, like Boosie's children are. And some of them weren't. They just listen to rap songs. They just watch provocative movies. They're taking in all this information from society. And so, no, I'm the man because I got fellatio from a 30-year-old woman. And I'm only 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Hell, 18. Even though you're technically an adult. But that should bring up red flags, right? If you're 18 and a 30-year-old wants to mess with you, it's not just that you got game. Because trust me, when you're 18, your game is ass. Or maybe that's just me. In society, we equate sex to manhood. And this isn't just in the heterosexual culture. In gay culture as well. Why? Because it's this idea of, and think about it, someone who's quote unquote, I'm not going to even say closeted, but they haven't allowed anyone in yet. Because we know that's what's taking place. They haven't allowed anyone in yet. And so how are they going to allow their peers in to try and explore their sexuality? No, they're going to go to an individual who's older. Who has more quote unquote wisdom, who has more insight into their own sexuality. And so again, it becomes that badge of honor. But in reality, again, it's child molestation, child sexual abuse. It's rape. Whether you want to call it that or not. But there's also another part of this conversation that I haven't seen addressed. And that's with the woman who participated in this. The perpetrator. Now, don't get me wrong. There are two perpetrators here. Boosie is clearly one. Boosie is clearly one. And when I say that he needs to have his kids taken away, I'm not saying for forever. But clearly he needs to go to therapy. He needs to go to parenting classes. And he needs to see that there are consequences for behaviors such as these. Point blank. And the same thing goes with the woman. She made a beyond piss poor decision. I have no idea who she is. Some people say she's a sex worker and she was paid for it. He might have said that. But what does that mean? Listen, I'm empathetic to the plight of the sex worker. I recognize all the barriers and all the stigma attached. Because you're just trying to survive. But does that make it any better? No, I don't think you should be going to jail because you decide to engage in consensual sexual acts with another adult. No, that's BS. That's nonsense. You shouldn't go to jail, or you shouldn't be given a citation because somebody pays you for sex. Let the old heads tell it. Listen, man. Take them to a movie, you take them to dinner, and you might have paid for it. But that's a conversation for another day. But there needs to be consequences for this woman. Whatever charges Boosie is brought up on, she should as well. Now, granted, no, we don't know her identity. But we can give the idea of Jane Doe that same energy. Because she probably on social media. She probably checking the Shade Room and Boss Up and all these other gossipy sites. She should be getting a business. No, she shouldn't be shamed for being a sex worker. Before this very real crime that she committed and that she engaged in. Again, we have to hold people accountable. Unfortunately, no. In everything, we cannot take into account your prior mental health, the prior abuse you might have experienced that had you to become a sex worker, or that had you to become a proud father, getting your child fellatio at the age of 12 and 13. Because if that's the case, R would be free, and a lot of other people would be free. If we're taking that into account, we can't. Because the one thing that I learned from being in the social work profession and being in child welfare in particular, everything is about the best interest of the child. And so although Boosie might believe somewhere inside, because I truly believe, thinks that he believes that he's acting in the best interest of the teenage boys that he come around and that he engaged with. But that ain't it. That ain't it. And so just like that,